Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I will tell you about the homeowners association that banned me from my own road. I was drinking coffee out of a chipped camp mug standing in my driveway when a woman in a neon visor marched up and told me I was banned from using the road I had graded with my own hands. "You can't drive here anymore," she said as if reciting a parking rule. "And we'll need a key to your farm gate by Friday. We're still going to make you part of the HOA whether you want it or not." That was how I met Nesta. It was a pale morning, the kind where the sun looks half asleep and the oak leaves hang still. My place sits at the end of a gravel drive I carved from my front pasture to the county-maintained blacktop. The driveway is technically a private road in the sense that I recorded an easement for it when I bought the parcel, so I could run service trucks in without chewing up the pasture. The deed language is dry as toast, but very clear. Appurtenant to Parcel A for ingress and egress, burdening no other parcel, maintained by me alone. I've read it enough times to know it by heart. The development down the hill didn't exist when I moved in. 2 years later, a builder bought the weed-choked land by the creek, divided it into lots, and brought in folks who like optional front porches and tiny yards that are easy to mow. They created an HOA, then promptly decided that anything within drone range ought to fall under their aesthetic continuity. The drone was literal. They had one, and it whined over my field the way a mosquito winds your ear. That morning, visor flashing like a warning sign, Nesta introduced herself as the HOA president. With her was a lanky guy who dressed like he was on his way to play golf, but looked like he'd never touched a club. His name was Draco. I don't know if his parents were creative or cruel, but he wore it like armor. Nesta thrust a folded paper at me and started talking in we as if she owned a crown. "We voted to extend the HOA boundaries to include your road," she said. "You use it to access our subdivision road, which is private, so you are a beneficiary of our infrastructure. And your farm traffic degrades the visual harmony of our neighborhood, the trucks, the dust, so we need access to your farm for inspection and to ensure compliance moving forward." I stared at the paper. It wasn't a government document, it was a notice of rule adoption, with their letterhead and a daisy logo. The letter had a tone that you might use with a messy roommate. I folded it back gently and handed it to Nesta. "This road is on my deed," I said. "The county keeps that road out there open to the public. Your subdivision road connects to it, but it's yours, not mine. You don't get to ban me from using my own driveway, and you don't get access to my farm." Draco crossed his arms. "We have an attorney," he said, like a kid threatening to tell on me. "We'll just file to make you part of the HOA whether you want it or not." I sipped my coffee and let the steam blow into the cool air, because sometimes you need a moment to not say the sarcastic thing. I'd learned that silence has weight. It's amazing how often someone will fill it with exactly what you need to hear. Nesta did. "Also, your bees," she went on like she was reading me a grocery list. "We've had reports, allergies, and the rooster. It crows. We are proactive." "We are proactive" is not a sentence that goes in a law book, I said. "And bees are livestock. So is the rooster. If you enter my farm without permission, that's trespassing." She smiled like a teacher who's decided she's going to win a conversation with a student. "We can't trespass on our own property," she said, and tapped her notice with one manicured finger. "We've adopted your road." That was ridiculous enough that I actually laughed. It wasn't unkind. It was just the kind of laugh that bursts out when a person says something that breaks the logic fence in your head. "Adopt a dog," I said. "You don't get to adopt my private road." They left in a little huff cloud. I watched their shoes kick dust from the gravel I'd hauled myself. I have 6 goats, a dozen hens, 2 hives, and a mule named Punchline. On hard days, I talk to Punchline more than I talk to people. He's good company. That morning, when Nesta and Draco went away, Punchline was busy nudging the latch of the paddock like he always does at feeding time. I scratched his neck, and I promised him I'd deal with this. I know my way around reading a deed. I handle my business with lists and receipts. My palate for drama is low, but I'll run a marathon for fairness. So I did what any frustratingly organized person would do. I made a folder. I labeled it Road Foolishness, wrote the date, and started a list of calls to make. The county clerk, the recorder of deeds, the sheriff's non-emergency line, my neighbor Everett, who has an exquisitely suspicious mind, and finally a friend of a friend, a property attorney named Lissa, who once won a fight over a fence line that had its own fan club. The clerk answered on the 3rd ring. I relayed the basics. She pulled up my plat, my recorded easement, and the first page of the HOA's recorded CCRs for the subdivision. "Your parcel is not in their legal description," she said. "There is no annexation on file. If they want to annex, they'd have to follow the procedures in their CCRs and any state law for expanding an association. That generally requires a vote of the existing members, a vote of the owners to be annexed if the CCRs even allow annexation, and, well, you get the idea. Also," she added, and the paper shuffling on her end sounded like authority, "your road is on your parcel. They can't adopt it by vote. Non-emergency dispatch took my report like they were stacking cards. Okay, there was a dispute. No one was in immediate danger. Yes, if someone tries to enter your property, call back. I asked about their subdivision road being private. If they could legally gate it, would I be trapped? The dispatcher paused and said, if your parcel has any kind of recorded or implied access, that's civil. But if they block a public right-of-way, that's criminal. If they block you from exiting your property while you're on a recognized ingress-egress path, call us. I called Everett because he lives one pasture over and has binoculars positioned like artillery. He listened, grunted, and told me he'd seen the drone again. We agreed that I'd put up more cameras on my fence posts with little signs that say recording in progress. I already had 2. It was time for 6. Lissa called back just before lunch. I gave her my condensed play-by-play. She laughed at adopt a dog, then sobered. I can talk you through the steps. 1. Find out if those folks are confused bullies or purposeful bullies. 2. Respond in writing. 3. If they persist, consider a cease and desist, and depending on their behavior, a petition for declaratory judgment. 4. If they set foot on your land, call the sheriff and get a report number. 5. Keep your neighbor relations clean because the court pays attention to that. I printed out my deed, my plat, my easement language, the subdivision CCRs that I pulled from the county site, and I put them in my road foolishness folder. Then I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and wrote a letter. Dear Board of the Daisy something, I avoided the actual name because it wasn't official, regarding your Notice of Rule Adoption delivered today by your representatives Nesta and Draco. I am not and have never been a member of your association. My parcel is not within your recorded legal description. Your CCRs do not apply to me. The gravel road on my parcel is private. See deedbook _____, page ____. See easement recorded _____ for ingress-egress to parcel A, maintained and owned by me. The county road is public. Your subdivision road is private. I do not use your private subdivision road for access. My driveway connects to the county road directly. You do not have permission to enter my property, nor do you have a legal right to demand access. Any attempt to obstruct my ingress or egress, to harass me or my livestock, or to interfere with my farm operations will result in immediate law enforcement involvement and further legal action. Cordially, despite the nonsense, me. I made 3 copies. I hand-delivered one to the little HOA kiosk at the subdivision entrance with a time-stamped photo. I mailed one certified. I posted one on my fridge where good ideas go to live. For a week, nothing happened. I fed Punchline, I got the goats to quit pretending they're gymnasts on the hay feeder. I set out shallow water dishes for the bees. I helped my neighbor Suri dig out a clogged ditch. I pretended Nesta and Draco were a weird dream that had happened because I ate chili too late. Then the letter arrived. It had a real attorney letterhead and more Latin than a church service. The gist was that they believed my purported private road encroached on their aesthetic interests, and that continued use would constitute a nuisance and a trespass on their members' quiet enjoyment. They again demanded an access key to my farm for inspection purposes, and suggested that if I refused, they would take all legal remedies, including an emergency injunction. I called Lissa. She hummed as she read. This is a lot of air in a bag, she said, but it's air they paid for. The nuisance claim dies because your use predates their development, and you're agricultural. State right to farm statute protects you from nuisance claims for normal farm operations, so long as you were established first, which you were. As for trespass, they're calling your movement on your land a trespass against their aesthetic. That's creative. And by creative, I mean nonsense. I'll send a cease and desist and ask for their legal basis for any right to inspect. Also, I'm going to ask for their annexation vote if they think they annexed you. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a vehicle idling where no vehicle should be. My cameras pinged. I checked my phone and saw two HOA board members in day-glow vests parked across the mouth of my driveway, right at the juncture with the county road. They were setting up an A-frame sign that read, "Private Road, Residents Only." I walked down with my camera rolling. "Move your vehicle," I said, calm as pancakes. A man I recognized from their flyer, he'd been labeled Community Ambassador, which is a term that makes my teeth itch, smiled at me. "We're securing our private road access," he said. "If you'll just show your resident sticker." "I'll show you my deed," I said, "which says this is my private road. Call the sheriff. I'll wait." They did. So did I. The deputy who showed up had a face that says he's watched more than one pointless drama unfold where people could have just not been irritating. He took my documents, looked at their sign, then asked the board members whose idea it was to put the sign on my gravel. "Our board," the ambassador said. "This gravel belongs to her," the deputy said, pointing at me. "See?" He tapped the survey stake that marks the edge of my property. The ambassador looked at it like he'd never seen colored tape on a stick before. The deputy told them to move the car and take their sign back to their side. "You can put that sign on your subdivision entrance," he said. "You can't put it here." While they grumbled and packed up, the deputy handed me my papers. Quietly, he said, "If they block you again, call us. Every time. Document everything." I did. I installed more cameras, including one that grabbed a wide shot of the junction. I added a motion-activated floodlight. I put up a small sign that said, "Private road, no trespassing. Trespassers will be recorded." I smile even writing that because nothing says I was raised by polite people like adding "will be recorded" instead of "prosecuted." For me, the camera is the prosecution. 2 days later, I got the drone again. It hovered low over my field near the hives. I could hear it buzzing against the usual fall buzz of bees. I walked out with a bright orange tennis racket-looking thing. A bug zapper, technically. I didn't swat the drone, I didn't touch it. I held the zapper and stood under it, scanning the edge of the subdivision with my hand flat over my eyes to block the sun. It floated up and away. Everett texted, "I saw your little parade with the racket, $10 they post about your aggression." I laughed. He was right. Within an hour, I received a letter from the HOA saying I had threatened community property, and that this proved the need to annex my road for safety. Lissa's cease and desist went out the next morning with exactly the tone I love: crisp, factual, boring. She requested that they identify any statute or case law supporting an HOA's unilateral annexation of a parcel not within their legal description, any authority for an HOA inspecting property it does not govern, any map or recorded document changing property boundaries, and notice of any intention to continue harassing me at my driveway. She cited nuisance law, trespass law, the right to farm statute, and my easement. She copied the sheriff's office. That's when the anonymous letters started. Good neighbors share. We all have to live together. It's one little key. They were written in tilted cursive and smelled faintly of laundry detergent. One included a photo of a child playing with a puppy and a note. "Wouldn't you want to keep our kids safe from your rooster?" It would have been manipulative if it wasn't also baffling. The rooster sleeps in a coop 2 fields away from their subdivision. It crows when the sun comes up, which is what roosters do. It's not perched at their window at 3 a.m. singing a solo. I could have just ignored the letters, but I like paper trails because paper has a way of persuading when tempers fail. I wrote a response once and copied it for the stack. "I am not a member of your HOA. Please direct communications to Lissa. If you enter my property, I will call law enforcement." Short, clean, signed. 2 Saturdays after the sign incident, I heard hammering by the junction again. This time I called the sheriff as I walked. The deputy arrived to find 2 men installing a chain between metal poles they'd driven into the dirt at the edge of my gravel. The chain would keep me from turning out to the county road unless I got out, unlatched it, moved it, drove through, and latched it back. A pain on a daily basis, but specifically illegal if it blocked emergency access. The deputy, different guy, same patience level, asked them about permits, record of ownership, authority. They mumbled that the board had voted to protect the community. The deputy told them if they wanted to protect the community, they should host a bake sale and donate to the firefighters, because as of that minute, they were dismantling a barrier they installed on property they did not own. He made them haul the poles back across the line. I took photos of everything, their truck, the chain, the holes they'd driven. When you move through life making lists, something happens. You develop a rhythm for staying calm while other people do wild things in front of you. I wasn't angry yet. I was fascinated and determined. There is a difference between people who are confused and people who don't mind if they trample you to get what they want. I was collecting data to find out which kind Nesta and Draco were. My neighbor Suri, who doesn't love conflict but loves fairness, baked me a pie because she knows food smooths edges. We sat on my back steps and ate slices straight from the tin with forks and no plates. She told me that the HOA message board had a long thread about my dangerous livestock. Someone had posted a photo of my mule from an angle that made him look like a dragon. I think they're scared of what they don't understand, Suri said gently. But that doesn't give them the right to take your road. On Monday, Lissa forwarded me an email from the HOA's attorney with the subject line, "Settlement Proposal." It was a masterclass in euphemism. They would allow me to use my private road if I agreed to voluntary compliance with a list of their rules. No commercial vehicles, no deliveries before 9 a.m., no tractors on weekdays, no outdoor storage of farm implements, no livestock within 200 feet of their boundary, no unapproved sounds between sunset and sunrise, and a right to inspect twice a year. If I signed, they'd let me place a guest pass sticker on my truck so their neighborhood watch wouldn't confuse me for a trespasser. I wrote one sentence back to Lissa. Respectfully, I declined the offer to pretend they own my life. Lissa responded to them with the velvet hammer she keeps under her desk. She attached a draft petition for declaratory judgment, asking the court to declare that my parcel is not subject to the HOA's CCRs, that the HOA has no authority over my road, that their attempts to block and regulate my access were unlawful, and that they should pay my attorney fees. She didn't file it yet. She just included it, highlighted. She also mentioned that if their drone continued to fly over my property at low altitude, we would consider claims for trespass and harassment. 3 days later, I found a man standing in my field by my hives. He wore a vest with safety printed on it and held a clipboard. He said he was there to inspect my bee mitigations. I told him to step back immediately. He said he had HOA authorization. I said my farm isn't in the HOA. He said be reasonable. I said the sheriff is on the way. My bee suit was hanging right there on the fence post. I put it on not because I was going to move the hives. I was not going to move the hives with an uninvited man near them, but because I knew the visual would pass a message. The bees were calm because bees are reasonable creatures until a person with a clipboard stares at them like a threat. The safety man backed away and left on foot, cutting across my pasture toward the subdivision. I got video of him climbing their split-rail fence, snagging his vest and ripping a hole in it big enough to be a metaphor. I watched my game camera footage that night with Everett. We sat on my porch with a bowl of popcorn and played a grown-up version of Wildlife Watch. We saw deer, a raccoon, Suri's runaway cat, and the drone again. Everett said, "They think they can wear you down. They don't understand your particular stamina." We both laughed, because particular stamina is a polite way to say stubborn as a fence post. If you've read this far in a story from a stranger, maybe you know the sense that you are about to learn how deep a rabbit hole goes. If you're hoping that this rabbit hole is short, I'm sorry. I didn't pick its depth. The next escalation was not in a field and not at my driveway. It was in a bank. I got a call from my lender's fraud department. A woman with a calm voice asked if I'd recently requested that my loan be escrowed through a community dues payment plan with the Daisy Association. I nearly dropped the phone. "Absolutely not," I said. She explained that someone had submitted a form with my name, parcel number, and a community dues structure that included a road usage fee, a livestock mitigation fee, and an inspection fee. The bank was calling because the numbers didn't match anything in my file, and my signature on the form looked like a toddler's drawing. They had already marked it as fraudulent and locked it down, but they wanted me to know. I sat there at my kitchen table, pressing the cool of the phone against my cheek, thinking about what happens when a person who wants a thing decides that every lever is theirs to pull. I thanked the fraud department. I called Lissa. I called the sheriff and made a report. I printed everything and put it in the road foolishness folder. Sometimes it helps to get out of your house when a fight comes to your door. So I went to the hardware store and bought a chain that could haul a truck out of mud and a lock that looks like it should guard a pirate chest. I didn't plan to chain my gate shut. I still hold that we live best when we aren't fortressing ourselves. But I wanted a visual that communicated exactly how not invited the HOA was. I also bought 2 signs. Agricultural operation in progress, protected by state law, and no trespassing, cameras in use. The sign most people never see is the one in your head that says, "I will not be bullied." It's not sold in hardware stores. It gets forged when you're told that your life must shrink to fit someone else's comfort. That week, my inner sign got painted in bold letters. Nesta knocked again one evening at dusk when my goats bleat in a way that makes the whole farm sound like it's singing. She brought Draco and another board member who introduced herself as Tella. Tella had a binder and a pen and a face like she'd arrived to calmly explain how I ought to live. Nesta did the talking. Draco wore his name like armor again. Tella watched me like she was measuring furniture. "We're done arguing," Nesta said. "We're being reasonable. Sign the voluntary compliance, and we'll let you use the road without further trouble. Refuse, and we'll put up a gate at our subdivision entrance, and you can explain to your delivery drivers why they have to wait at the county road and why your friends have to park down the hill and walk in. You put a gate across the county right-of-way and the sheriff will cut it off," I said evenly. "You put a gate across your subdivision entrance, you'll inconvenience yourselves. I'll still be able to use my own driveway because it doesn't cross your land." Draco rolled his eyes in a theatrical way that made his visor bob. "We have funds," he said. "We can fight this for a long time." Tella, in a softer voice, said, "People bought here for peace. Your rooster isn't peaceful. Your bees aren't peaceful. Your tractors aren't peaceful." I smiled because sometimes the pure fact that you exist is the thing someone wants gone, and it's a relief to hear it said. "You moved next to a farm," I said. "Peace here includes the sound of animals living." Nesta said something that slid the last puzzle piece into place. "We're still going to make you part of the HOA whether you want it or not," she repeated, like she'd written it on her bathroom mirror. "We're not asking." "Then I'm not asking either," I said. "Leave my property. Do not return without a court order." They didn't leave right away because people like to have the last word, but eventually they did, with the particular shuffle of shoes of those who believe they should have prevailed. I watched them go, my porch light catching the dust like glitter. Punchline flicked an ear. The bees hummed. The rooster settled. It took me a day to decide on my next step. I have a policy in my life. Measure twice, cut once. It applies to wood, to friendships, to anything that has a chance to go sideways. I thought about going straight to court. Part of me wanted the declaratory judgment filed and stamped and taped to my front door like a constitution. But a friend who teaches civics once told me that sometimes the fastest path to winning a fight is to let your opponent walk themselves into a hole they can't argue out of. I sat with that. Then I called Lissa and told her I wanted to try a particular kind of compliance. "I'm going to follow every law to the letter," I said. "I'm going to post all the correct signage. I'm going to notify the county about every interference. I'm going to film everything. I'm going to not give them anything to twist. And then, if they still push, I want to bring down the kind of consequences that make them rethink their approach to the world." Lissa made a happy humming noise. "I do love a careful client," she said. An odd subplot began then that I didn't anticipate. A woman named Rhea, who lives in the subdivision and quietly keeps to herself, reached out through Surrey. She wanted to talk, but not on the board's lawn. We met at the thrift store parking lot on a Wednesday. She wore a sweatshirt like she was trying to blend with the asphalt and kept glancing over her shoulder as if a camera drone might catch her. She told me that the board had been pressuring owners to sign protective covenants amendments that went beyond the recorded CCRs, noise, livestock, anything that might be seen from the street, by hinting that if they didn't sign, violations might appear on their doorsteps. "I didn't sign," she said, her voice small in the way of someone braver than she knows. "I told them I have friends with kids who have sensory issues and need chickens for therapy. They said chickens would lower community value. I think they're trying to make a country neighborhood into a display." Rhea also told me something else. The board had been talking about partnering with law enforcement to remove vagrants if necessary. "They're calling you that," she whispered, and laughed nervously. "Not to your face, but in the meetings, they say your tractor is an eyesore and your activities are non-conforming. Everything about my farm conforms to the zoning. Agricultural with a dwelling, permitted livestock, permitted small retail by appointment for eggs and honey. I printed the zoning code and put it in the folder. You might think the next thing that happened would be more signs, more drone, more letters, and you'd be right, but it got stranger in a carefully calculated way. I woke one morning to orange paint on my driveway, 2 big X's across the gravel like a treasure map for mean people. They were placed exactly where my tires roll. If I'd been less awake or more hurried, I would have thought nothing of it, but I've worked jobs where markings matter. These weren't random, they were careful, and they were exactly where you'd want a boulder if you planned to sabotage a truck. I got a shovel and found, sure enough, 2 cinder blocks buried 6 inches down. They would have shredded my tires if I'd driven over at speed. I took photos. I called the sheriff. The deputy this time arrived with a face that had run out of patience. He looked at the blocks, the paint, my cameras, my folder. He asked me if I had any enemies beyond the HOA board. I told him that my mule side-eyed the farrier sometimes. But no, my enemies were mostly people who didn't like bees. He took the report. I asked if it would be possible to increase patrols by the subdivision entrance for a few days. He said they'd do what they could. He told me quietly that he'd spoken with the board and that they were energetic. I told him that was a diplomatic word. That afternoon, I bought a trail cam that shoots license plates at night. I mounted it in a scrub oak. I posted a new sign at the driveway mouth, "Warning, you are being recorded for security purposes." I highlighted recorded. I made sure the sign lined up with the camera angle so that anyone thinking of doing something would have to do it while reading the word recorded. About a week later, I was bringing in a load of hay when I saw a half-dozen kids on bikes lined up at the edge of my pasture. They were peering through the fence, whispering in that hissing way kids do when they want to be quiet but they also want to out-whisper each other. I waved. They waved back. One shouted, "Is that donkey friendly?" I said mule, not donkey. But yes, Punchline was kind if you offered him an apple. I got an apple and handed it through the fence. The kids were delighted, their heads tilted in unison the way children's heads do when animals make funny noises. Then a woman from the subdivision stormed toward us, arms flailing. She yelled at the kids that they had to come home immediately and yelled at me that I was luring children onto my property. I stayed gentle because kids were there. I told her I was feeding my mule. I told her there was no lure. I told her it's okay for kids to watch an animal chew an apple. She said the HOA would get me for this. I said the HOA is not my parent. She stalked off with the children trailing like ducklings. I add this moment because it told me something important. The story the board was telling about me wasn't just about roads and bees. It was about making me a symbol of disorder, a wild factor in their carefully manicured grid. That's why they wanted my road. It wasn't just a path for my truck. It was a symbol of a life that didn't match their brochure. That night, Everett and I sat on the porch again. He handed me a printout he'd snagged from someone's recycling bin. Don't ask. It was a draft board action plan for unnamed neighbor annexation. They'd written it like a playbook. Their steps included create a narrative of safety concern, pressure owners with fear of property value loss, leverage municipal partnerships, and escalate to legal sanction if voluntary measures fail. It was like reading a recipe for boiling a frog. I felt a weird, clear tiredness. It's the kind of tired that turns into fuel if you let it. I called Lissa the next morning and said, "File it." She filed the petition for declaratory judgment and for injunctive relief. She also filed for a temporary restraining order prohibiting the HOA and its agents from entering my property, blocking my driveway, or attempting to collect any dues or fees in my name. She included exhibits, my deed, easement, plat map, photos of the sign and chain and cinder blocks, the fraud department note, the letters, the drone video. She sent copies to the sheriff and the county attorney. She asked for attorney's fees and costs, which is a way of saying, make them pay for making this necessary. The court set a hearing for 10 days later on the restraining order. In the meantime, the board sent one more letter, this one with a tone I recognized from their first, that careful, paper-thin civility that covers a threat. They said if I persisted in wasting community resources, they would seek sanctions, and they again suggested that peace could be bought by simply joining voluntarily. I had nothing left to say to them outside of court. The morning of the hearing, I put on the only suit I own, the one from my cousin's wedding. It fit well enough. I scraped dirt from under my nails even though I knew that no one would look at my hands. It just felt right. Lissa looked like a legal superhero. Nesta and Draco showed up with their attorney and 2 other board members. They had thick binders and a confidence that looked brittle if you'd ever seen a person try to bend too far. The judge was brisk and to the point. He asked first if the HOA had any recorded annexation document adding my parcel to their legal description. Their attorney said they believed annexation was implied by usage. The judge raised an eyebrow that could cut rope. Property law, he said, doesn't usually operate on vibes. We all smiled except their side. Lissa laid out our case like a neat row of fence posts. She showed the deed and the plat. She explained the easement and the zoning. She described the drone, the sign, the chain, the man in a safety vest, the cinder blocks. She moved with the kind of quiet that makes a room lean toward a person. When she finished, the judge asked the HOA attorney to respond. The HOA attorney said their clients were concerned about safety, noise, aesthetics, property values. The judge stopped him with a hand. "That may be," he said, "but concern is not the same as authority." He granted the restraining order. The HOA and its agents were barred from entering my land, blocking my driveway, flying drones low, or trying to collect fees in my name. He set a date for a hearing on declaratory judgment and sanctions. We stepped into the hall and the relief felt truly bone deep. It wasn't over, but it was a mile marker you could touch. Nesta stared past me. Draco's eyes said they hadn't expected to lose. Tella stood still, like paper suddenly had rules you couldn't will away. I went home and mixed a celebratory mash. Victories deserve carrots. I texted Everett, Suri, and Rhea. We ate takeout on the porch and laughed. I slept like someone who'd done something worth sleeping about. But lines invite coloring. The board shifted to whispers. Anonymous flyers bloomed on mailboxes. My farm attracted pests, contaminated the creek, brought the sheriff constantly. Rhea gathered samples, Lissa filed them. Meanwhile, the bees worked, the goats climbed, and Punchline the mule refused to do anything dumb. A new neighbor, Kellen, a cello teacher, moved in across from my field. His evening scales floated like a low river. Then came a notice. His instrument use violated quiet enjoyment. They fined him for unapproved sounds and said lessons needed prior consent. He cited zoning that allows home enterprises and asked for my lawyer's info. Preparation became ritual. Lists, coffee, cameras. 4 days in, the trail cam paid off. At 2:11 a.m., a silver SUV idled at my junction. 2 silhouettes hopped out. One toted a bag. One, a short sledge. The plate reader tagged the HOA ambassador's vehicle. A frame caught Draco's laughing face. The deputy watched the clip and opened a mischief case. 2 evenings later, a drone skimmed so low it spooked Punchline. I filmed and watched it dart away. By morning, a deputy had advised a gadget-happy pilot that county code and state privacy law make harassing flights actionable. Lissa added the stills and statutes. The board doubled down anyway. They claimed my driveway benefited from their road. My farm activities were a nuisance. A caption labeled Punchline an unknown large equine. I minded the arrogance more than the taxonomy. Then the bank called again. Someone tried enrolling me in an HOA auto-pay portal using a spoofed email and the HOA office phone. The bank blocked it. Lissa forwarded both the escrow stunt and this portal gambit to the prosecutor as potential fraud and attempted identity theft. On the eve of court, a community ambassador demanded my gate key for an emergency inspection, claiming a child was menaced by a goat's stare. I invited him to define menaced to the sheriff. He retreated. At the hearing, the judge had read everything. Lissa asked for a declaration that I was outside the HOA, a permanent injunction, fees and sanctions for bad faith, blocking, drones, fraud, cinder blocks. The HOA tried to conjure a reciprocal easement from porous boundaries. The judge, "Where is your recorded authority?" I testified, deed, easement, dates, sign, chain, drone, safety vest, flyers, fraud, cinder blocks, intense goat. Lissa played videos, showed Rhea's safety narrative emails, the bank's attempted escrow alteration, and introduced right to farm. Ruling my parcel isn't in their description. Annexation needs my consent. My road is mine. Interference unlawful. Right to farm protects normal operations. A rooster at dawn is normal. Harassing drone flights are actionable. He granted declaratory judgment and a permanent injunction, ordered fees, referred the fraud to prosecutors, and required a correction letter within 14 days. Consequences followed: charges for Draco and the ambassador, a plea in service for Tella, a drone fine, sanctions on the HOA, a recall ousting Nesta and Draco. Life returned to boots and buckets. We hosted a harvest concert at the fence, cello, students, cider, one rooster encore, and the HOA mailed its correction. I labeled the folder Road Foolishness closed and kept my road. Friends, thank you. See you soon.